I says, what happened? He goes, while I was up there and I dove down, he said about a 60-pound tuna, and it might be bigger, 60-pound tuna came up and swam around me all the way up to the surface. He says, when I was yelling at you, that tuna was swimming around me on the surface. That's why I wanted you to get the gun to me, okay? And then by the time you got here, the fish was gone. Well, we didn't get any fish that day. We didn't shoot any fish that day. But it was very interesting. I drove all the way back down to Newport Beach. Then my early days as a Neptune involved Terry Moss again. I had never seen a white sea bass. So guys were showing me pictures of one. I was a tentative Neptune in 1982 when I went to my first blue water meet. And the guys would show me pictures and said, this is what a white sea bass looks like. So, okay. So we got up at 4 o'clock in the morning, went out to Church Rock. As soon as the first gray light came at about 4:30, I looked out and there's Terry Moss's boat there, and I realized that we were in the right spot. And he was diving with a guy, I think, named Bob Stanbury. I heard Bob say, I got to lose some of this weight. And he wasn't talking about his gut, he was talking about pulling weight off. So I saw him take some weights and put them up on the back of Terry's boat. So that I figured out, you know what, these fish must be deep. If he's pulling off weight, these fish must be deep. So I think by now it's about 4:45. And I'm starting to be able to silhouette and see shadows in the water. So I dive all the way down to the bottom, which I think was only about like 60 feet. I'm laying there, and I got a 6-foot Tahitian gun with 2 bands on it and a reel. I'm laying there, and here comes this fish, and I start to think, and I go, you know what? That looks like a white sea bass. That looks like one of those fish. So I let it swim by just to make sure. And I go, you know, it's not a black sea bass. It's definitely one of those whites. So as it was swimming away, I took a shot at it, and I had a 6-foot barrel gun with about 200 pounds or 300 pounds of rubber on it. And next thing I know, the line's coming off the reel, and I go up and pull the fish up, and it's close to 30 pounds, 28, something like that, 27. I don't know. Anyway, everybody's assured me that, hey, that's a winning fish. That's a great fish, Don. Well, I ran the boat the rest of the day for the guys. We come back at the beach, and everybody's going, well, where's Terry? No Terry. You got it, Don. That's it. You got it. No Terry. About 5 minutes before the closing, you know, it's like noon or something like that. Here comes this screaming, and it wasn't a Wilson then, he had a whaler. He had an Outrage. This Outrage comes flying into the cove at Mach 10. He pulls right up alongside our little boat, and he throws this. I thought it was a tuna. It was the biggest yellowtail I've ever seen in my life. And I think it weighed 39 pounds. So that was my inspiration. And what happened later on is a guy by the name of Doug Ulmer joined our club. My boat partner, Mark Lamont, worked for Scuba Pro. He gave Doug every spot, every secret spot that we had together privately, he gave him to Doug Ulmer. So I told Doug about that, and he says, you know what? I'll take you out for the next couple of years. And all those big fish you see in my pictures, I wouldn't have any of those fish if it wasn't for Doug Ulmer and that beautiful 32-foot blackfin that he had. And we were addicted to going to Cortez Bank. And we didn't do it the Terry Moss way. We didn't do it safely. We did it like a bunch of cowboys. Anytime he had 3 days off, we went. If we didn't have 2 other guys to go with us, the 2 of us went to Cortez. One of my most remarkable dives was at Tanner Bank. The current was running about 4 or 5 knots. We put out a 300-foot current line with a red-eye buoy. And he got in the water and then came back with a tuna. And he said, you got to get in. And I said, okay, I'll get in. Now, normally what we do is you have a surrogate skipper. One guy's in the water, the other guy runs the boat. Well, so I get in the water to shoot my tuna. Next thing I know, Doug's right aside of me. Now, if I read my notes to you, and you can look it up on the internet, but Tanner Bank's about 102 miles offshore. It's about 38 miles from the backside of Clemente. It's a long frickin' swim, okay? And we had current so bad that we had this current ball out that we're hanging on to. We're hanging on to a line about 300 feet long. And every once in a while when we'd shoot a fish, we'd swim off and the fish would come off. We'd actually lose the line. A couple times I barely made it to the ball. And now I look over and Doug's in the water with me, right? And I'm like, oh my God. That was one adventure. We both got tuna, and it was just immense. I don't know how many times I've been to Tanner and Cortez Bank. I was addicted to diving. I put diving and blue water in front of everything else I did. My son wasn't born then, so I could do it. But another trip I was on, I had Jay Rife with me. Jay and Doug and I pulled up to Cortez Bank, and this is where I want to say I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. We pulled up to Cortez Bank. It was flat like an aquarium. And I went, wow. We looked over the side and says, you know, the viz looks funky. It looked black. Jay got in the water. He says, you know what? We can't dive here. There's too much bait. So I got in the water, and he wasn't kidding. It was 100 feet where we were anchored, and there was no salt water left. All it was a solid molten ball of silver bait. And then in between that were kelp stalks, forming blue Swiss cheese holes to the sunlight. A sea lion would come blasting through that and form a big blue corkscrew through the mercury. You can't even imagine it. You can't even imagine it. We swam around. We had white sea bass that were so fat swimming around, we didn't even shoot them. We swam around and watched them. Ted Heeson and I followed one for about probably 500 feet. He was barking out bait. He was so bloated with bait. So we decided, you know what, we have to move the boat. This is not fun, you know, we got to move the boat. We moved the boat to a spot called the 9 Fathom spot, about 4 miles to the north. Jumped in the water, and it was the same thing. That day, I bet there was 5 miles of solid silver bait at Cortez Bank. I don't think I'll ever see it again in my lifetime. I didn't have an underwater camera, but I've got it burned in my memories. I've got a lot of other memories like that. And if you guys share a couple beers with me, I will tell you those.